Intuitive Machines expects early end to IM-1 lunar lander mission. That's right, Nova C, aka Odysseus, unfortunately coming to an end. We cover that. We cover Odysseus has less than a day left on the moon before it freezes to death. We cover final images of Ingenuity reveal an entire blade broke off the helicopter. And lastly, Lockheed shows off its new speed. Today is going to be a fantastic episode. Day 28 Space News. My name's Mike. Stick around, smash that like button, and let's just get into it. Odysseus has less than a day left on the moon before it freezes to death. This is by our friend Eric Berger. Really appreciate what you do. Well, let's have a look. Here's a picture of the moon taken by a satellite orbiting the moon. Odysseus on the surface, surrounded by a few craters. It's located currently in the South Pole region of the moon in the Malaparte A crater. This was a picture by NASA's LRO mission. Let's have a quick look at what the LRO is all about. Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter is a spacecraft currently orbiting the moon in an eccentric polar mapping orbit. Data collected by the LRO has been described as essential for planning moon landings. It's been around since 2009. That's some excellent longevity. They put a lot of thought into the hardware selection for that kind of mission. Although the moon doesn't experience all that much radiation, as long as you have a thick enough aluminum shield between your electronics and sensitive devices and the sun, you tend to extend your lifetime to over 10 years. And there are a lot of papers on that. Hopefully one day we will cover that kind of calculation. Let's get back to the LRO. Let's go back to this Ars Technica article. So time is running out for the historic Odysseus lander that made a soft touchdown on the moon last Thursday evening. In an updated post on Monday morning, the company Intuitive Machines that built the spacecraft said, "We believe flight controllers will continue to communicate with Odysseus until Tuesday morning." The lander, when it landed on the moon back on the 25th of February, when it landed, it caught a leg and ended up tipping over. Some of the payloads have been able to turn on, but the lander itself is unable to correct and upright its position. The missions will end early. This is all fantastic work. These are very complicated missions, and just getting to the moon and having somewhat of a soft landing is a fantastic achievement. It tipped over on its side and will only be able to collect solar energy for a limited period of time. They have solar panels on the side that is not tipped over. This is a cubed vehicle. A few of the panels will be exposed to the sun. The moon has very long days. Perhaps it's not going to be exposed to the sun for long enough for it not to die. Will it not eventually be re-exposed to the sun and therefore recharged and able to continue its mission? Hopefully they'll explain that in the article. The company had hoped to operate its privately developed lander on the surface for a week or longer, but now that will no longer be possible due to the limited ability of Odysseus to gather solar energy. As the sun dips closer to the horizon and with the 2-week-long lunar night coming, the spacecraft will eventually freeze to death. Okay, so the electronics go bye-bye because they can't stay heated. Not great. The shorter than anticipated lifetime is due to the lander's position on the surface. On Friday, during a news conference, Intuitive Machines chief executive Steve Altemus said that the company believes it had come down to the lunar surface in a vertical configuration as anticipated. For reasons that Altemus did not entirely explain, the lander came down a bit faster than anticipated, 2.7 meters per second instead of 0.9 meters per second. Still, this pace, about the same as a moderate walk, was within the tolerances the vehicle's landing legs and structures to withstand. The problem is that it also had lateral motion of about 2 miles per hour, as we discussed, and thus it snagged a leg and might have fractured the landing gear and tipped over. They can't be certain. There actually is an onboard payload built by a bunch of students. I believe it's called Eagle Cam, that was supposed to be taking pictures of the lander as it landed, but they ended up canceling that mission due to the complications with some onboard LiDAR equipment that had to be swapped via software update quickly to use other LiDAR equipment. Very complicated mess. So they don't have pictures of the landing gear, and therefore I can only guess what state it would be in. Based on the information available, they say it is lying horizontal but somewhat elevated off the ground. so perhaps leaning against a rock. They knew this because the solar panels on the side of the vehicle were able to gather solar panels. So perhaps when they say on the sides of the vehicles, they're also including the side that is facing the ground. Some of that energy will bounce off of the surface of the moon and be collected by the solar panels slightly raised up off of the moon's surface. This meant that the body of the vehicle had to be somewhat raised above the surface. Here is a great picture of the lander. So it is hexagonal in shape with its landing legs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It looks beautiful. Well done, Intuitive Machines. I pray for your next mission. I'm sure it will be much smoother. You've gathered a lot of information. They had a new type of fuel mix, so liquid oxygen and methane, that was part of their thruster system that was tested. So they got that technology ready level 9, which is a great achievement. Here's a discussion on data desired. So Intuitive Machines received from the spacecraft orbiting the moon. The LRO, which flew over the landing site, was able to take a picture. It determined a precise landing spot for the vehicle and at an elevation of 2,579 meters. Elevation above what? Sea level? I'm not sure how that would work. They have an idea as to what the concept of sea level would be on the moon, which doesn't have liquid water. Another critical question is whether operators will be able to download images of Odysseus on the surface of the moon. To date, they have not published photos from the moon's surface. There remains some hope that a CubeSat camera developed by students will be deployed and activated before Odysseus's power runs out. So what do we make of this? The mission has achieved some notable firsts. No privately developed spacecraft has ever made a soft landing on the moon before, and it is important that IM has been able to maintain contact with the lander for several days. At 80 degrees south, no spacecraft has ever made a soft landing so close to a lunar pole. Fantastic stuff. We have another article, same topic, by Space News. This is by Jeff Faust. Thank you very much, Jeff Faust. Really appreciate what you do. So Intuitive Machines expects early end to IM-1 lunar lander mission. They communicated that the lander was tipped on its side. This is the first communication since the 23rd briefing, where the company revealed the Nova C lander likely tipped over. The company released a low-resolution image taken by the spacecraft after landing. Let's have a look at this. After understanding and communication requirements, its vertical descent to its Malapart A landing site. So this is a picture of it facing the moon? The contrast is quite interesting. I'm not sure what we're looking at here. Is this perhaps the crater, and why is it so contrasted with what's around it? If you know, hit me up in the comments. So the company said the lander continues to communicate with flight controllers. Okay, we're just trying to find new information. Talks about Eagle Cam. So the site may have complicated the landing. The landing site is described by NASA as a degraded crater about 1 kilometer across. The slope of the landing site is a relatively steep 12 degrees, which Mark Robinson, a principal investigator for the LRO camera, described as sporty in a post about the images. Trying to land on a 12-degree incline with a extremely difficult mission already might not be the best choice, but they also had difficulty with their terrain relative navigation cameras. That was the core problem that they had, where they had to update the software in order to have terrain relative navigation. Look down, say, are there rocks here? I don't want to land on those. Let's change our trajectory slightly to land on a flat patch. What was the word here? Sporty. It's sloped at a sporty 12 degrees. So perhaps they're talking about this site. Yeah, that would be quite. But these legs are likely static with some absorption involved. I'm not sure they're able to handle 12 degrees without. However, that's interesting. So if it did in fact tip, that means it tipped. It must be inverted such that its head is facing into the center of the moon, because it would have tipped towards the lowest point of this crater. I don't know. The stock market was reacting negatively to the news about IM-1, so if you were shorting, you probably did very well. Shares in Intuitive Machines were still down more than 1/3 in trading midday on the NASDAQ. These shares were still trading higher than before on the February 15th launch of the mission. The stock went crazy over the last, I think it was year. It's gone up 3x, or like 3 months. Intuitive Machines stock. This was another company that went public via SPAC. So very up and down. A year ago, it had a valuation of 20, and then over the last few months, it's been about $3-4. And then the news came that it had successfully passed its second stage test, burning that liquid oxygen methane mix, and its valuation shot up to $11, and now we're looking at $6.27. So that's the way she goes. Love to see the science. Let's move on to final images of Ingenuity reveal an entire blade broke off the helicopter. So Ingenuity is the Mars helicopter that was launched off of the, what was that rover called? Perseverance rover. It was an $80 million roughly mission it was operated with a Snapdragon processor. It wasn't radiation tested likely before it made its way to Mars. It was many times more powerful than the next most powerful computer that NASA had ever used. Space computers are like a decade behind the technology that is in your cell phone. So that's really cool. You can see one blade here, and then the second blade is clearly missing. Perhaps it's what we see on the left-hand side of this image. So it has now been several weeks since NASA's helicopter Ingenuity made its final flight. It had made roughly 72 sorties on the planet Mars. Bravo, bravo. Great. It took some fantastic pictures. It proved that you can get away with quite a lot in space design, depending on your mission, obviously, as rigid with hardware selection as we initially thought. There are creative ways that you can use better custom off-the-COTS parts to develop a spacecraft or a vehicle that can operate for let's say a short-term mission successfully. So here, on January 6th, Ingenuity flew 40 feet skyward, but then made an unplanned early landing after just 35 seconds. 12 days later, operators intended to troubleshoot the vehicle with a quick up and down test. Data from the vehicle indicated that it ascended to 40 feet again during this test, but then communications were ominously lost at the end of the flight. Also, I didn't mention that the reason they had to use the Snapdragon is because there were weight limitations that they could not meet with the existing BAE radiation hardened computers that they normally use. So on January 20th, NASA reestablished communications with the helicopter, but the space agency declared an end to its flying days after an image of the vehicle's shadow showed that at least one of its blades had sustained minor damage. This capped an end to the remarkable mission during which Ingenuity exceeded all expectations. Let's see if we can get a better view. So at the end here, there's clearly some sort of breakage. The surface of Mars, is that not mind-boggling? Also, what resolution is this camera? That's fantastic. How are they getting this information back? There must be so much loss. Their algorithms to recover these kinds of images must be fantastic. Anyways, I'm fangirling a little bit. Let's go back. No, okay, we're still here. So during a news conference to discuss the end of the mission, NASA officials said that they may never know exactly what happened during its final 2 flights, but thanks to Perseverance, the rover that brought Ingenuity to the surface, it was able and helped relay communications back. Engineers picked up a powerful clue this weekend. So the rover is now moving away from the helicopter and bound for other scientifically interesting vistas. After recently getting to within 450 meters of Ingenuity, Perseverance likely will never be as close again. However, the rover turned on its SuperCam remote micro imager towards the helicopter for the final time. These images, captured this weekend, were sent back to Earth on Sunday. A German student processed some of these images to form a mosaic showing the helicopter and its surroundings in Neretva Vallis. That's a beautiful name. I wonder where it came from. It's an ancient channel through which water once flowed. I'm getting shivers. Broken blade in an ancient channel on Mars. So we are now the Martians, leaving parts of us on these planets. Imagine someone someday, some other civilization will have its own rovers come onto Mars, and they will say, "What is this object? It's very foreign. It does not look like it belongs on the Martian surface. Who left this here?" It's kind of cool to think about. So the new images are remarkable. Okay, thank you, Eric Berger, for the article. Let's move on to last but not least, Lockheed shows off its new speed. So this article is going to talk about how these massive companies are typically very slow, very regulation heavy, And sometimes they're even after being regulation heavy, after being slow, after going through all of the design steps, preliminary design review, critical design review, being really rigid with all of it, some of their projects still don't end up working. So with the upcoming high-speed companies that are smaller, more agile, will need to take risks, these larger companies that typically take up a lot of the cash offered by the government every year are moving faster. So this is by Rachel Zisk. Anywho, let's get into it. So Lockheed Martin is trying to buck the sluggish reputation often attributed to defense primes. Ignite, the company's faster-moving innovation arm, is about to launch the Pony Express 2. I'm not sure how much I like military companies using childish names for their spacecrafts. I don't think the Pony Express 2 should be allowed to fire missiles. You can call let's say a warship Pony Express 2 and have it fire nuclear missiles. I don't think that'd be appropriate, but perhaps this is just like an observation satellite, still military oriented, but less of a contrast, I guess, to test a suite of advanced communication and networking technologies. Okay. So the 2 satellites comprised the mission are expected to launch aboard Transporter 10, SpaceX, currently scheduled for March 4th, so in about a week and a bit. Ignite is meant to operate more like a startup within the sprawling organization that is Lockheed Martin. Rather than relying on government contracts or predetermined mission objectives, the projects envisioned within Ignite are entirely funded by Lockheed Martin. So the idea is to mature nascent technologies so they are easier to sell for interested customers down the line. Or as Martin's Space EVP Robert Lightfoot put it, Ignite aims to get these innovations over the valley of death so that we can show them, the customer, that we've got maturity in the systems we come to offer them, so that they don't have to take the risk. Though structured differently, the innovation arm isn't entirely siloed. Pony Express 2 is designed to feed information into the Department of Defense's Joint All-Domain Command and Control Initiative. That's a mouthful. Which pulls in data from as many sources as possible to make sure that national security-related decisions are made in the most efficient, informed way possible. Makes a lot of sense. I'm sure all of the other countries are trying to do this with their assets as well. So if you have drones, helicopters, satellites, you're going to be trying to mix and match all of the information so that you have global coverage during war zones. This is going to give you real-time feedback so that you know where to send your troops at any given time. If you want signals intelligence, you now have it collected globally, and you could say, okay, I want to point my signal intelligence, focus my efforts in a certain area, collect the intelligence from that country, let's say, and then use that to act on what you consider bad actors. Anywho, that's the show. I want to thank you so much for sticking around. It's been Space News Day 28. My name's Mike. Smash that like button, and I will see your lovely face on day 29 tomorrow. Bye-bye.